Hi guys, Tim here, and we're back with the race car. So we've got to get this thing ready to get it on track at Castle Combe. So today we really need to get the exhaust on and make a start on that welding. So let's have a look and see how bad this actually is.
Last video, this exhaust left a lot to be desired, so we just simply had to swap it out for a spare we had in the workshop. So we test fit the Scorpion, but it turned out that the car was missing some exhaust mounts that fit to the body. So we had to take some drastic steps and fabricate some of our own so the exhaust fitted nicely. Now, we're not making any of that sweet YouTube money yet, so we had to use what we had in the barn. Now we've got to do some adjustment because that exhaust isn't right, but it looks kind of good. So we're going to have to straighten the downpipe to the centre section, and I think it's blowing a bit from the centre donut as well. But I think you'll agree the exhaust is the least of my concerns right now. I was far too excited about getting a 16 valve track car for £1,300 to actually check for any rust until we got underneath it to do the exhaust.
So this rust is an absolute pig, and to do the rust at the back, I'm going to have to take the wheel arch trims off and the bumper off. We're going to have to do the side skirt to do the rust at the front, and we're possibly going to have to take the seats out because we don't really know what's above those plates that have been riveted in. So let's take it apart and see how we get on.
And of course the wheel arch trims and side skirts are riveted on because it's a race car. Or is it because these wheel arches were so full of filler that they just wouldn't have fitted using the standard rivets underneath? Either way, they've got to come off and we'll see what's underneath. And with those off, it's time to tackle these rivets on the inside that are plated on the floor, no doubt covering up a load more rust. This is not going to be pretty.
And so with the plate off from the inside, you can see what it was covering up. Right, so Sam's cut out one section of the rust so far, and his advice to me was I should probably grab a beer. So let's take a look, see how bad this rust actually is. But yeah, from what I saw before Sam started cleaning that out, it didn't look great. So well, look, it's got to get worse before it gets better, hasn't it? Okay, so on the first pass through, just to get a rough clean up to see if we've got enough bare metal or good metal to make it viable to weld. And this is kind of what we're left with. So you can see here, this is where the plate was riveted on. And then as we go here to the sill, that is not pretty, is it?
So it looks like we've still got a lot more to cut out before we weld a plate back in.
Now obviously this is not going to plan, and I guess the question is, are we going to make it to Castle Combe in this car? Or is this just a bit ambitious, and it's going to be the slowest parade lap in an automatic Jetta coupe anyone's ever seen? So looking at the hole underneath the car, this is the template for what needs to be welded in. So it's a lot of metal to be going back into the floor of that Mark II, but that's what it's going to take to get this thing back on the road. So we're going to make a start on it and see how we get on. But yeah, to start with, that's what we're up against.
Now I know you can buy repair sections to replace the whole floor, and if this was a restoration, we absolutely would.
And as if by magic, we have a metal plate with a bend. So we pop the metal plate into the jig, bent it in the vise. No, not in the vise, in the press. So we bent it in the press, and Sam has expertly cut it out to roughly the right shape that we need to patch that floor. And obviously It will need a little bit of fettling once it's in, but it's pretty much there or thereabouts to be welded in.
Now this is a huge amount of welding. Clearly it would take ages to show you, and it's not that interesting, but needless to say, Sam got the welding done, just cleaning the welds up. Time to paint them and move on to the next job, but we're clearly not going to get this finished today.
2 days later.
It is a Tuesday evening. We've got a couple of days until Castle Combe, and we are still not ready with this race car. I'm sure you've all been there last minute trying to get a project across the line to get to a show or a track day. So fingers crossed, with Sam's help, we can get this thing ready.
Now the brakes have never really worked on this car since I've had it. So we fitted the new discs and pads, and it's time to bleed the brakes, and hopefully we can get them working.
We have got brake fluid leaking everywhere. So it turns out the reason the brakes didn't work very well,
it was because the master cylinder is finished. Look at the state of that thing. So luckily we've got a spare. And so looking at what we've got the master cylinder off. And look at the state of that seal. And to be honest, that whole thing has seen better days. So we fitted a 23mm master cylinder off of a Seat Cordoba that we just happen to have kicking about, as you do.
But it wasn't until we fitted it we realised that the fittings were a different size. Normally we'd swap the fittings and change the brake lines, but we haven't got time.
Now at this point in the day you'd think we're pretty, but luckily we've got an old caddy that we were due to weigh in, but didn't get around to it, obviously.
Now it turns out the Caddy's master cylinder was actually an upgrade, so it's slightly larger bore than the standard Golf one, which is good, but to be honest it doesn't matter. We need to get this working tonight because it's booked in for an MOT tomorrow. So we're bleeding the brakes up now, we'll get it ready. Once it's had its MOT, we've got a couple of days till Combe so we can fit a brand new master cylinder before we go on track.
So here we are on Wednesday. We've still got stuff to do. This car is going for an MOT in a couple of hours time, and there's still problems with it. This has been a bit ambitious. Now we sorted out the blow in the exhaust. We sorted out that centre donut that was blowing. The trouble now is that with the pressure in the exhaust, now it's leaking from the next point of failure, which is the manifold gasket. There's a leak there. So before we take it in for an MOT, gonna have to get that done, along with an oil and filter change as well. And yeah, we're cutting it fine, but look, it's Wednesday, we can get this done, we can get it in for an MOT, and fingers crossed, no nasty surprises, we can make it to Castle Combe. So we've got to pop the inlet off and take a look at this exhaust manifold gasket. So fingers crossed there's going to be no surprises, but we should be able to get this swapped over in the next hour. We're cutting it fine, but let's do this. So we've got to take this off, and that's not going to be too hard. A couple of bolts here to get that done. Get this out the way, and then we need to just get down behind there and get that 4-branch manifold out and get that new gasket in. Right, and now it started raining. It's like literally what is going on? The gods are conspiring against us to get this car finished, but we've got the exhaust manifold off, and when I say we, I mean Sam has got the exhaust manifold gasket off, and now it's a case of just getting some new studs in there because the old ones are pretty crusty. So we've got them just here, and as you can see, they are not looking great. They're all seized on, but that's fine. A couple broke, but we managed to get those out. And now we just need to replace them with some shiny new ones. And fingers crossed, we're good to go. And these were the replacements that we fitted. Obviously, there are a lot more. These are what we've got left over from the job. Right, so after all this, taking it down the road, didn't get far. Wanted to check to make sure the manifold wasn't blowing, and it's not. Sounds great, but notice one of the brakes is a bit sticky and squeaking. So we've had a quick look, pop the wheel off. Now guys, bearing in mind it's a day before a track day, if you found yourself in this position before, or you're doing crazy stuff with Mark IIs, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, it really does help, and press the bell icon for a notification of when we upload the next video, if we ever make it to Castle Combe. And looking at that, the boot is all chewed up in here, and basically, yeah, the caliper's just not working, so I'm going to have to swap that out as well, and fingers crossed that's the last thing we've got to do.
Now that's the new caliper back on, so time for more bleeding of the brakes.
Up, down.
Oh, that's hard. Oh yeah.
And that looks like that could be it. So with the wheels on, we should be good to go. So we've done the calipers, we've replaced that, exhaust manifold, gasket, and some new studs. Fitted a new fan in the interior because that wasn't blowing, and it's going to be hot at the weekend. And yeah, we should be ready for this MOT now. So fingers crossed, and we'll see how we get on. So guys, I'm in the car. We're off to get the MOT done. So wish me luck, and hopefully I will see you very shortly with some good news. And there we have it. We have an MOT'd track car. Oh guys, I can't tell you how relieved I am that it passed. I mean, Sam, fair play to him, has put so much work into this, especially in the last week, just to get this thing ready for Coombe. So big thanks to Sam for getting us to where we are. Now, what's this cost? So it was £1,300 for the car in itself, then probably another £200 in service items. So cam belt, water pump, plugs, oil, all sorts of bits and pieces. Spent about £200 on servicing it. So then we spent another £130 on brake pads and £60 on brake discs, I think they were in total as well. Now, on top of that, we also had to change the exhaust, but luckily we changed it for a spare one that we had sitting around the barn, so that didn't really cost us anything. And then next up was that surprise brake caliper that we had to change today as well. So again, it's one of the spares I had, but I guess I'm still going to have to replace it. So whatever a 16 valve brake caliper would cost, I guess that's the cost we are on that so far. Now obviously we got the wheels, they were £150, plus we needed some tyres as well. Now we went for the Yokohamas, they were about £300 for a set of tyres on there as well. So all told, we've spent quite a bit getting this car up together, and hopefully it's going to be worth it. Other than that, we threw in some spare suspension we had up the barn, so again, didn't really cost us anything, and I think that's kind of it. Now, driving it tonight, I have noticed a couple of things, that the speedo doesn't really work, which is an absolute pain. Now, the gearbox whines in first and second quite badly, and when you change from first to second, it crunches like an absolute bitch. So yeah, we're gonna have to change that gearbox at some point going forward, so that's another thing on the list. Had a quick look underneath when we did the oil change, and there's some liquid metal on the bottom of the gearbox, so obviously something has happened and that gearbox is not a happy chappy. So guys, after all these late nights and long days in the workshop, we've finally got it ready. It's finished. We're off to Castle Coombe. Remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I'm going to upload what happens at Castle Coombe next. So guys, thanks for watching, and I will see you on the next one.